Welcome to the South Bay Diabetes Rewind Seminar. We hope you enjoy today's presentation. We have many other health presentations on our YouTube channel. Feel free to check them out.
Let's get started. They say time flies when you're having fun, and since we are now on session 5 of our 6 sessions, I would say you, like me, should have been having a wonderful time. We hope that you have been getting some good information and that you have been sharing it with your friends. We do have a few announcements before we get started. Lisa?
Yes. Let's see. Yes, I would like to repeat my announcement from last week is that we are having a health celebration, and we're excited about that. And that is going to be, does everybody remember? It's going to be on the 17th, Saturday, July 17th at 11 o'clock and in person at South Bay. And we would love to have you join us. As I mentioned last week, we would love to hear from all of you who are willing to share how the program has worked for you. Don't be scared. It's easy, maybe a couple minutes. We'll have Dr. Inankur ask you a few questions like, how did you hear about the program? And what changes have you been able to make? And just easy things like that. So nothing to be afraid of. But it would just encourage South Bay Church to continue supporting these programs. And it would encourage anyone who hears who might be struggling with some health issues. So we would encourage you to join us. We're going to have a talk by Dr. Eric Nelson, who is with us tonight also. And we're going to have some delicious plant-based lunch. So you don't want to miss that. And again, it's Saturday, the 17th at 11 o'clock. Please be sure to let your group leaders know tonight that you are willing to share with us on that day. Thank you.
Thank you. Well, it's time to get some more good recipes from Miss Rachel. I'm sure you have been enjoying what she has given so far. Rachel, take us away.
If somebody could let me screen share, that would be awesome.
Yes, sorry about that. That's
no
my
problem.
fault.
Let's see. Still disabled here.
I'm working on it.
No problem. I should have told you beforehand. I forgot to remind you.
All right, you should be able to do that now.
There I am. Okay. See if I can get it up here real quick. All right. Well, I'm so happy to be in person here with you guys this evening. I've been out all over the place and had a lot of fun, but put a lot of miles on the car. It was a lot of fun though. I hope you all had a chance to enjoy family and also good food, good healthy food over the holidays. Tonight, I'm going to share a recipe with you that I absolutely loved. It takes a little bit of cooking time, but the procedure is still very simple. So the first part of the recipe requires sweet potatoes. Now, I realize not everybody loves sweet potatoes like I do, but again, they're very healthy for you and they're just amazing in so many ways. But right now is also a time you can pull a lot of different things from your garden. So you could substitute zucchini here. You could substitute summer squash, peppers, onions, mushrooms, even if you wanted to for this particular recipe. Or you can add them in with the sweet potatoes and you'll enjoy that as well. And all I did here is peel these sweet potatoes. And you wouldn't even necessarily have to do that. Mine were just bruised here a little bit. And you have salt and thyme and garlic. And to be quite honest, I didn't actually use fresh garlic. I used garlic powder just for the sake of time. And but you could do either. And I cut them up I didn't add any oil or anything because I love using these Silpat mats. If you are not familiar with Silpat mats, contact me later about them. I love these things. You can bake on a baking sheet. You don't need any oil. And you can get a crispness out of your vegetables, or even use them for cookies. They clean up so easily. So I highly recommend them. And I just season these sweet potatoes and bake them. Now, the second part of this recipe is a crepe. And you're looking at these ingredients going, we're gonna make a crepe out of this? Yes, we are. So you start off with some spinach, which you, the rest of the ingredients you can see there's no flour. We're using a chickpea flour, so it's beans. And we have a little bit of cornstarch, salt, and baking powder. The first thing you do in this is you blend up the spinach in water. And after you do that, you dump it in a bowl and add the rest of the ingredients. You can see the spinach water is kind of foamy. And you just whisk this together. And after you've whisked it together, you leave it to sit for about 15 minutes. So the chickpea flour can soak up the spinach mixture. And after that, you just pour it onto a griddle or a frying pan, just like you were making a pancake. And these go very quickly. I made it kind of small just because I wanted to make sure that the first one I made was, I could get it off the pan easily. And they come off wonderfully. They don't stick to anything. I put a little bit of oil on my pan just because I'm using a cast iron pan and they like to stick, but you use a non-stick pan, that would be perfect. No oil is necessary there. And then after that, you just flip it and cook it on the other side, and it makes about 6, I believe. And here you can see I topped it with some salsa, but right now you could top it with anything. You could use pesto or even spaghetti sauce if you want it instead of salsa, or just eat it as it is. It's good that way. Or make a plant-based gravy. And so I went for simplicity this time, and we've really enjoyed it with the salsa on it. So I hope if you get a chance to try these, let us know. I was really pleased with the spinach crepes, especially because they are very flexible. So you could use them for all kinds of things, anything that you would use. So if you have any questions, please let me know. And if that's, I will see you all next week. Thank you.
Thank you, Rachel. Learning something new all the time. That's quite interesting. Okay, now we're going to move on to our lecture with Dr. Aysha, who's been giving us some great information. We're ready for you.
Great. Well, good evening, everyone. We're going to talk about a powerful tool for sensitizing ourselves to insulin, and that is intermittent fasting. But as we begin, as always, just like to remind us that this program is for education purposes. Please work with your healthcare provider as you're changing your lifestyle. That way, your healthcare provider can adjust your diabetes medications and possibly your blood pressure meds to help you stay feeling well. Erica was diagnosed with type 1 diabetes at age 11. She managed it carefully by taking long-acting insulin and then short-acting insulin for her meals. She also restricted her carbohydrates. But her energy levels started to decline and she gained excess weight. Then Erica learned about the Mastering Diabetes method for managing diabetes. She was at first skeptical because it went against everything she had heard before. But she decided to give it a try. And within the first week of following this program, she noticed her blood sugars were more stable. And at the start of her using the Mastering Diabetes method, she was taking 21 units of insulin daily. This was her long-acting insulin, and then she took for meals 1 unit for every 6 grams of carbohydrates. Her A1C was 7.7 at the time. But within 1 month of using the Mastering Diabetes method, she had lost 13 pounds, and her long-acting insulin, which had been 21 units, was cut in half, and her mealtime insulin was now just 1 unit for every 11 grams of carbohydrates. she started intermittent fasting to gain insulin sensitivity. And within 6 months, she had her first regular menstrual cycle, her first 2 regular menstrual cycles. And she'd not had regular menstrual cycles in 6 years. So this gave her hope that she could become pregnant. By May of 2017, she had lost 34 pounds, and now her carbohydrate to insulin ratio was 36:1. So this means that she was needing 1/6 of the insulin she had previously needed for carbohydrates, and she became pregnant. 9 months later, she delivered a healthy son, and at the time of delivery, her A1C was 6.6, so it had come down from the 7.7 back in 2015. And during pregnancy, she had stayed on a low-fat, whole foods, plant-based diet. She was feasting on foods like mangoes, papayas, pineapples, persimmons, tomatoes, tofu, potatoes, and corn. She said, laughing, "When my doctor looks at my continuous glucose monitor, it appears as though I don't have diabetes." Intermittent fasting worked well for Erica, and it's worked for a lot of other people. Intermittent fasting plans have been trending upward in popularity, and there are at least 3 types of intermittent fasting. So we'll talk about all these types, starting with time-restricted feeding. The time-restricted feeding is a daily intermittent fast. The most common form is the 16-8 diet. And in this diet, a person eats during an 8-hour window, and then they consume non-calorie beverages for the remaining 16 hours of the 24-hour cycle. And then on the 18-6 diet, a person eats during a 6-hour window, and they consume water and other non-calorie beverages for the other 18 hours during a 24-hour period. Dr. Verity and her team at the University of Illinois in Chicago have found that when obese individuals follow a 16-8 diet, they automatically reduce their calories by 300 per day. And when they restrict their eating window to 6 hours in a day, they automatically reduce their calories by 550 per day. And this is without counting calories or portion controlling. Now, if you are taking oral or injectable medications for diabetes, I recommend that you talk with your healthcare provider about how to adjust or modify your medication schedule when you fast. Many medications are prescribed to be taken with food, and they can cause bloating or abdominal discomfort if taken without food. So discuss your fasting regimen and your medication with your healthcare provider, and then you will likely be able to get on a safe plan for regular fasting. Going back to Dr. Verity's studies, those who were following the 16-8 diet were studied for 12 weeks. And you can see here that their weight started to trend down. So by the end of the 12 weeks, they had lost over 2% of their starting weight. And that was compared to persons who weren't doing the intermittent fasting, who really had a stable weight. This wasn't a large amount of weight loss, but it was a steady and progressive loss. And then when they looked at how many people were following the intermittent fasting throughout the study, they found that even at week 12, on average, participants were following the 16-8 diet for over 5 days a week. So the nice thing was that it was pretty consistently followed. And this was a type of diet that at the end of the study, people said they wanted to continue. So intermittent fasting using a daily time-restricted feeding pattern works really well because a person can reduce their daily calories and lose weight without calorie counting. Now there's the once a week 24-hour fast, and it could look like this. So on Wednesday, a person could eat their first meal of the day and at 7 o'clock, and then like 30 minutes later, when they finish their meal, they start their 24-hour intermittent fast. During that time, they want to make sure they consume plenty of water. Want to stay well hydrated while fasting. they could go to bed. I just picked this time, 10 p.m. to go to sleep. And then the next morning they would eat breakfast around 7. And so they would break their fast. So that's one strategy. And I had a patient, I've had multiple patients, many patients who do the 24-hour fast. This particular continuous glucose monitor report was from someone who has type 1 diabetes, and they take long-acting and short-acting insulin. So on December 8th, they were not fasting, and around 7 in the morning, they took their long-acting insulin. Then they took some short-acting insulin 3 times that day. And then December 8th, they chose to do an intermittent fast, and they did not consume any calories. They were using ultra long-acting insulin, so they didn't need to take insulin this day. The insulin they took on December 8th was still working on December 9. And although their blood sugars were trending down a little bit very early in the morning, when they actually got up for the day, blood sugars were in the target range, and they stayed right in that target range between 70 and 180 all day. They were very stable. So I'm just showing this to demonstrate that intermittent fasting can work well for persons with diabetes, even persons with type 1 diabetes. Medications do need to be adjusted, but once an appropriate medication schedule is established, blood sugars can stay in the target range during a fast. Now, some people may choose not to do a complete fast. And if you live with type 1 diabetes and you think you're taking a lot of basal insulin and that you may have low blood sugars based on your basal insulin, you may not want to completely cut out calories for a day. And you may want to avoid a complete fast if you are prone to frequent low blood sugars already, or if you have a difficult time concentrating or focusing mentally when fasting, or if you experience violent mood swings when your meals are delayed. And one reason that some people have these mood swings is that while they're consuming 0 calories, their brain may be deprived of glucose if their liver stores of glycogen are small. So if you're going to do a modified fast, it could look like this. So Wednesday at 7 in the morning, a person could eat a small breakfast, 1 or 2 fruits, a serving of a whole grain or cooked legumes. They'd still want to be drinking lots of water during this modified fast. Around noon, they could have some non-starchy vegetables, some cooked vegetables. They could have a couple handfuls of salad vegetables, so raw vegetables, and then some legumes or a serving of grain. And then in the evening, they could have 1 or 2 of their favorite fruits. So they would be getting 100 to 200 calories per meal for around 500 calories for the day. There are many benefits to intermittent fasting. And this study was looking at adults with type 2 diabetes who had abdominal obesity. They were put on 2 different diets. One group got calorie restriction, and they were told to restrict their calories by 25%. Another followed a standard diet. And at the end of 6 months, those who were on the calorie restriction had lost 4.7 kilograms. They lost a lot more than those on the standard diet. Waist circumference had dropped more than 3 times more on the calorie restricted diet compared to the standard diet. And the calorie restriction had also led to a reduction in kidney function or glomerular filtration rate compared to those who were not calorie restricting. And now in this study, having a reduced glomerular filtration rate was beneficial because those who had the reduction in kidney function were primarily persons with diabetes who had an over-functioning kidney to begin with. So their kidneys were hyperfiltering, and hyperfiltration is a risk factor for nephropathy. So the fact that those with overfiltration actually had a reduction down to the normal range of kidney filtering was a good sign. And this is what happened to blood sugars. Those on the calorie restriction diet had a significant drop. Those who were on the standard diet actually had a rise in their blood sugars. Those calorie restricted had a significant drop in their A1C.
whereas those not calorie restricting had a rise in their A1Cs. And then again, the glomerular filtration rate did go up a little bit in those who were over filtering to begin with. And in reading the details of this study, it turns out that although people were advised to calorie restrict 25%, they only reduced their calories by 15%. So even a moderate calorie restriction or a small degree of calorie restriction for 6 months made a significant metabolic impact and reduced their risk factors for heart disease and seemed to be protective for the kidneys. Now, diet-induced thermogenesis is the energy that is spent as heat after a meal. And we normally expend about 10% of our daily energy through diet-induced thermogenesis. This is also called the thermic effect of food. And here's a diagram of what happens with our energy expenditure when we eat. So when we eat a meal, we start to burn more calories, and these calories represented in the gut diagram are those that are spent from storing our food and from the energy required to burn some of that food as heat. Now, a study looking at men had them go to a research lab, and they had 2 different meal plans. They would start out with either a low calorie breakfast where only 11% of their calories came in the morning, and they ate a really large calorie dinner, or they switched to a very large breakfast and a small dinner. And the researchers found that the amount of energy they gave off as heat after breakfast was 2.5 times greater than the energy they spent after supper. And it didn't matter if they ate a low calorie breakfast or a high calorie breakfast, their diet-induced thermogenesis was still 2.5 times greater after the morning meal. Also, they found that their glucose and insulin rises were less after breakfast compared to after dinner. And when these men were eating a low calorie breakfast, they were more hungry later during the day, and their appetite for sweets was especially increased. So the authors recommended eating a large breakfast over a large dinner to prevent obesity and high blood glucose peaks. And that's true even if a person is dieting, it's still good to eat a big breakfast. Now, a study looking at a lot more people, the Adventist Health Study 2, looked at meal patterns. And this study involved over 50,000 adults who were living in North America, and they were followed for 7 years. And they found that during the 7 years, those who ate 2 meals a day had a reduction in their body mass index compared to those who ate 3 meals a day. They also found that those who were eating breakfast had a decline in their body mass index over the study course compared to those who were skipping breakfast. And then a longer overnight fast of at least 18 hours was linked with lower body mass indexes compared to shorter overnight fasts. So eating less often and eating early in the day was optimal for weight management. Now, what if you are underweight? Well, can you still do an intermittent fast? I would recommend that you first achieve an ideal body weight by eating 3 meals a day. And then once you're at an ideal body weight, you can choose. You can do the 16-8 fast or the 24-hour weekly fast. And of course, the 16-8 fast is going to be every day eating within an 8-hour window. When fasting, make sure to eat plenty of calories during your eating window to enable you to maintain weight. And there is some evidence that a once a week, 24-hour intermittent fast may be less challenging and maybe make it easier for you to maintain weight compared to doing the daily shorter eating window. And that's just a recommendation from Mastering Diabetes. A study that was actually just presented this year at the Endocrine Society had looked at over 10,000 adults who filled out the National Health and Nutrition Examination Survey. They asked people when they were eating the first meal of the day. And those who had started eating before 8:30 in the morning had lower blood sugar levels and significantly less insulin resistance compared to those who started eating later in the day. So this is just one more piece of evidence that eating breakfast and an early breakfast is good for us. So to summarize, calorie restriction has many benefits. It reduces our risk of heart disease risk factors, including our high blood sugars, and it appears to protect our kidneys. Intermittent fasting can enable us to restrict our calories even without counting those calories. And a couple of popular options are the 16-8 diet and then the 24-hour once a week fast. And we also have the option of intermittent energy restriction where we can just eat fewer calories one day a week. Front loading our calories in the day is especially helpful for weight and blood sugar management. And it probably has something to do with the fact that we tend to burn more of our calories as heat and store a few less of them early in the day. Next, we'll look at an even more exciting strategy for weight loss, and that is exercise. I look forward to seeing you back soon.
Thank you. Now it's time for us to go into our spiritual talk with Pastor Chris. Pastor Chris.
Hello, everyone. Good to see you. A question for you. Have you ever experienced something that was way more powerful than you realized initially? My wife and I had bought a camper. It's a 40-foot fifth wheel. We had lived in it for a few months. And then we were selling the camper and I needed to do some repair to the dishwasher. And so it wasn't working correctly. So I laid down on the floor and I reached my hand beside the dishwasher under the little front panel. I took it off and I reached up in there to try to wiggle some things up in there to help it work better. Two of my girls were standing in the kitchen watching me do this. And then I touched something that had way more power than I expected. Somehow I touched a bare wire and it grabbed a hold of my hand and I just started thrashing on the floor. I couldn't let go of it and it was not letting go of me. I did not have the forethought to turn off the electricity or to tell my girls if I was getting shocked what to do. And so I was just getting fried on the floor in front of them. Fortunately, in my thrashing around, my hand came loose, and praise the Lord, I didn't get electrocuted from my children. They never moved. They were just standing there watching me. In life, it seems that we experience a power that sometimes is out of our control. Perhaps diabetes, perhaps cancer, perhaps the forces that shape your world, your life, the job that you have. We at times it seems we're in control of life, and then other times it seems there are powers that are in control of our life. That happened to me in a very real way. One day, I was coming home from work, and I stopped by a store, and I went inside the store. It was a outlet store that sold sweet goods. Now, I absolutely love sweets. I have to be honest with you. I have a sweet tooth that's a mile long. And so I went in the store and I browsed around and I found it was a family-sized box of honey buns. Now, I don't think anything's wrong necessarily with honey buns, maybe once very randomly, but I bought a family-sized box because I thought I would take it home and share it with my family. Now, I had worked hard that day. It was just a physically demanding day. And I went out to my truck and I hopped in there. And as I was driving, my eye glanced down and saw the box of honey buns. And I thought, I'll have one. So I did. I enjoyed. There's nothing I love more than a honey bun. I don't like them warm. I like them just room temperature, right out of the box. Is my favorite way. So anyway, I ate the honey bun. And I kept driving. But there was this power, this thing somehow pulled on my mind, my appetite. It was like, Chris, there's more in there and you're not satisfied. So I had another honey, opened it up, I ate another honey bun. It was so delicious, it tasted so, I was still not satisfied. I wanted more.
And you eat the whole box, his wife wouldn't know.
My wife is walking by, she knows the story. And so then this power over I came and I had, you would not believe it. I'm ashamed to tell you, but I ate the entire box of honey buns. And then I had to drive through a gas station and slow it and throw it in the trash can. You know, the trash cans they have right by the gas pump. I had to throw it so my family wouldn't see the evidence that I eat an entire box of honey buns. Oh, I'm ashamed of myself. This power of appetite is something that sometimes we're in control of and sometimes it controls us. The Bible teaches us that this story isn't alone my problem. In fact, maybe some of you also have sweet tooths or other, maybe not a sweet tooth, but sometimes our taste buds control us and drive us in our life in ways that we don't want. This began a long time ago. In fact, back at the creation of this world, God had created everything beautiful for Adam and Eve, and he told them there was a tree they should not eat of. And Eve was tempted to eat something that she needed to refrain from. And the temptation to eat that which she should leave alone overpowered her, and she lost control. And much like myself, she gave in to the temptation that was there. Strangely enough, the appetite is something, our taste buds is something that controls us. It's a power that overwhelms us that we can actually find help in. It's interesting, after many, many years, Jesus came to this earth, God in human flesh came to this earth, and Satan came and brought Jesus a temptation. In Matthew chapter 4, it tells us what this temptation was. And the very first temptation that Satan had for Jesus was the temptation that Satan had for Eve in the garden, one regarding appetite, tempting Jesus in appetite. And you know what Jesus said about this thing that has controlled humanity for generations? Jesus said, "It is written, man shall not live by bread alone, but by every word that proceeds from the mouth of God." Jesus recognized that the source for power over our appetite was not within ourselves, was not by gritting our teeth, was not by necessarily looking the other direction. The source for power was in God's word. Jesus said, "It is written, man should not live by bread alone, but by every word that proceeds from the mouth of God." Jesus recognized that God's word has power. In fact, it says this in the Old Testament. I want to share with you a verse out of the Bible. It says in Isaiah 55, verse 10 and 11, it says, "For as the rain comes down from and the snow from heaven and does not return there, but it waters the earth and it brings forth the bud, that it may give seed to the sower and bread to the eater, so shall my word be that goes forth out of my mouth." So just like the rain comes down but doesn't go back, it accomplishes the growth of a plant and the production of fruit. God says his word would be the same. "It shall not return to me void, but it shall accomplish the thing which I please, and it shall do the thing that I send it to do." So when God's word is sent to do something, it actually does it. It's different than my word. You know, I tell my dogs, "Hey, come here, Tilly, come here, Hallie," and they look at me and they run the other way. God's word is different. God's word is sent and it actually accomplishes something. So I want to share with you 3 short, powerful Bible promises that will actually do something in your life. The first one is Philippians 4, verse 13. So the Bible says, "I can do all things through Christ who strengthens me." Now there's power in that. It's Christ who strengthens us. And this is a Bible promise you can hang on to. There's another one in Psalms 46, verse 1. "God is our refuge and strength, a very present help in trouble." God is our strength, and he's one that we can run to in time of difficulty. Isaiah 40, verse 29. "He gives power to the faint, and to him who has no might, he increases strength." So that is a powerful verse, that God gives us power when we feel faint. So the next time you're struggling with things like I struggle with, appetite, just remember that it's God's word that will give you the strength that you need. Run to him, ask him for help. It says in Philippians 4:13, "I can do all things through Christ who strengthens me." And you will find there is power available to help you in your difficulty, your temptation, or whatever you may face. So God bless you this week. I pray that you will find a refuge in Jesus as you find his word to be powerful in your life.
Amen.
Thank you, Pastor Chris. I don't know about others, but I needed that because when it's time to do what's coming up next or exercising, I need a lot of help from the Lord because I do not like to exercise. Laura, can you give us some tips, please?
I'll be glad to. Tonight, I want to talk a little bit about the other exercise, the exercise that we haven't yet discussed. Sorry, I'm seeing that something in my screen here that needs moved. There we go. So we have started by talking about burst exercise and talking about high intensity training. We progressed and talked about how to progress that an easy, simple way. Our second week and our third week, we talked about many other ways that we could progress our HIIT training. Last week, we talked about stretching principles and exercises that you can do to stretch your muscles. This week, we are going to cover strength training principles and exercises. So why would we need to cover this? Well, as we age, naturally, our lean muscle mass decreases. Our bodies say, hey, there's some extra space there. And so they take that extra space and they replace that space with some fat where that muscle was. So that's the first good reason to do some strength training. The next reason, as we age, our bone density tends to decrease. This is osteoporosis that many of us have heard of, or osteopenia, as it's getting closer and closer to osteoporosis. So if we are constantly struggling to keep good bone density, strength training exercises actually help our bones to grow stronger. So it helps our bone density. Also, strength training can help us manage or lose weight. It can improve our metabolism and help us burn some more calories. Strength training has also been researched and can enhance your quality of life, because you can do things more easily throughout your day, the stronger that your muscles are. It can sharpen your thinking skills. There has been research that actually shows declines in dementia by individuals who are doing strength training. Strength training also can reduce the side effects of many other diseases, such as arthritis, back pain, obesity, heart disease, depression, and what we're here for tonight, diabetes. So strength training can do a whole lot to help us. So why not learn some more principles of strength training and try to work on that? Tonight, we're going to talk about some principles. Now, you can strength train at home, or you can strength train at the gym. For me, if I have to go to a gym to work out to get all my strength training, it's not going to happen. I don't have that many hours in my day. So I'm going to teach you some principles that you can use anywhere, whether you are at home or whether you are at the gym. There are many different types of resistance. There are weight machines, and you can use body weight exercises. You can use resistance bands that are often made of latex, and they stretch with you as you move, or you can use free weights. One of my favorites is I have an ankle weight here that just attaches around my ankle. I like this because I also can use it in my hands, and it is a known poundage. This is a 5-pound weight. But if I were just starting out, this weight has a zipper on it. And so I can take out 1 pound at a time, these little packets, and have less weight or more weight. So this is one of the things that I actually purchased to do exercises at home. They're not very expensive. You can find them at most local retailers that have an exercise equipment section, and you can find them and use them in your workout. Sometimes I use those while I'm walking. So you could also incorporate that into your HIIT exercises. Now, some other things that I use, I use canned vegetables. This one is 13.5 ounces. So We're getting close to a pound here. Okay, so this oftentimes I've used to do some arm exercises. As I need to increase, my glass jars will work just as well as I'm doing that. So I can increase, and this one is 1.5 pounds. And then I have an even larger can that I can use. It's getting close to 2 pounds. So you can use items from your pantry actually to help with your strength training. As always, I want to encourage you to check with your doctor before you begin any of these exercises. And it's always a good idea to warm up with a cardiac activity, aerobic activity, for at least 10 minutes before you begin, because muscles that are warm are injured less frequently than muscles that are cold. So it's very, very important that you breathe with the work. Okay, if you hold your breath while you are trying to strength train, what happens is your blood pressure shoots up. And unfortunately, this can get into a bad event where you're having either a heart attack or a stroke because of the increased pressure in your body. So you need to constantly remind yourself to breathe. Take a deep breath in, and as you exhale, do the pushing motion, and then take another deep breath in and continue. Okay, you can stand yourself in front of a mirror, or like we mentioned last week, you can video yourself to check and see your posture while you're doing this. And as you are exercising, you should be supporting every part of your body. Excuse me, a little bit of a tickle still. Using your muscles to help hold you still while you are actively moving that one muscle group that you are trying to strengthen. Okay. Now, be efficient. If you can easily handle a 1 pound weight like the can, start with something bigger, because you shouldn't have to do 50 of these exercises. You should be able to do 10 to 12, wear yourself out, get good strength training, and get the effects of it. So make sure that you are finding what is difficult for you to do, and you're doing about 60 to 70% of what is you can only do one time, so that you are training yourself to get stronger. Now listen to your body. Pain and soreness are two very different things. I was in the clinic on Tuesday and I was joking with the patient because I continually was adding a little extra weight or a few extra reps to what they were doing. And I said, you're going to remember me tomorrow. If you don't remember me tomorrow, something's wrong. If you're having pain while you were working a muscle doing a strength training activity, something's wrong. You need to stop. However, you need to readjust everything, try again, see how it works. If the pain continues, stop it entirely and wait several days and then come back. However, if you feel 24 hours after a workout, pain in that muscle, you're kind of rubbing it and trying to figure out what's going on here. That's the notion that you have done something that will help your body. You're doing something right. I tell my patients in the clinic, I'm just giving you the exercises you're paying me to do. So if you feel sore, that's a good thing. You know that I'm doing my job. Keep on, okay? Strength training should not focus on all the same muscles in the same day. You should have one day that maybe focuses on your arms and your core muscles that help support your body and your abdominal area, and another day that focuses on your legs. Strength training should always be slow and rhythmic without jerking motions. And according to the US Department of Health and Human Services, we should strength train at least twice a week. So our goal, although there could be many of them from the start of our lecture, is to replace those shrinking muscle fibers with strengthened muscles. Okay, here are a variety of arm exercises that one could do to help them. Again, you can use your body weight as shown on the left. You could use a band as shown in the middle here, or you could use a soup can or things as shown on the right side of the screen here. Again, you don't want to do them until you can't lift your arms, but you want to do them at a good number of repetitions is usually, to start with, is usually 10 to 12. See how you react the next day. Then come back and try again. Now, a core exercise, all of us can use the exercises to help our core be strengthened. The core exercise that I show here is laying down, but you can actually do this exercise sitting. I've recommended that patients that are on the road a lot do this at stoplights. Anytime they come to a red light, the goal of this exercise is just to take the section of your belly button, section of your abs, excuse me, down near your belly button and pretend like you're trying to tuck that belly button into your backbone. Now I'm doing that exercise right now. I'm still able to talk to you. I'm still breathing. That shows that I'm doing it correctly. If I were doing that exercise and I stopped talking to you, there would be a problem. I would be holding my breath and I wouldn't be doing it appropriately. You can hold this muscle contraction in for about 10 seconds and then relax and continue as long as the stoplight's red if you're doing it at stoplights, or you can continue about 10 to 15 times. Excuse me, I'm ready for my water here shortly. And some leg exercises you can do. Again, you can do some of these exercises sitting. Actually, just moving from a sitting to a standing position is an excellent leg exercise to do. You can do your leg exercises trying to cross your body, trying to kick away from your body to the side, trying to kick backwards behind you. You can do mini squats. This one shows with a chair behind. That's the safest way to do a squat, just in case. Or you could do some lunges with high knees, and that can help strengthen you as well. Whatever you do, make sure that you are doing it with good form, with slow movements, and following all the principles that we have gone over this evening. Now, there are some more options. As we come down to the end of our time together through these diabetes sessions, I would be remiss to not tell you about other apps that you can use to track your exercise and fitness. I have a screenshot of many of the popular ones down in the bottom right section, but I've also highlighted my favorite in the top left of the screen. Excuse me. I use the Fit On Fitness app. It is entirely free, the section that I use. And these ladies will lead you through fitness. It will ask you questions to guide you through what exercises you're interested in doing and why you're doing the exercises. And it will network you socially with your friends if you allow it to. And so I use this to encourage my friends in their fitness, and they encourage me. So remember, your assignment for this week is to continue to ensure that you are challenging your aerobic capacity. That would be by increasing another variable of your burst training if possible this week. Again, your outlines from week 3 should have some great options for possible variables. Choose only one variable and increase that variable. Okay. Also, see if you can add in 2 sessions this week of strength training exercises. One session should focus on your arms and your core, and the other session should focus on your legs. And start working on building your accountability team so that you will continue to have success long after this program is over. Thank you so much for your time and your work and effort to continue to get a healthier you. I look forward to hearing your results on that upcoming sharing session that was mentioned at the beginning of the evening. Have a great week and continue to work on your health.
Thank you, Laura. All righty. It is time for us to go into our second lecture. Dr. Aysha, back to you.
Okay, thank you, Kendra. Well, we're going to talk now about exercise. Joan Walsh said, a man's health can be judged by which he takes 2 at a time, pills or stairs. And indeed, exercise seems to lengthen a person's life. Let's look at this graph from the Centers for Disease Control that shows the risk of dying prematurely based on the number of minutes per week of moderate or vigorous physical activity. The greatest risk of dying prematurely is at 0 minutes per week of moderate or vigorous physical activity. And the risk goes down But some of the greatest decrease in risk, the greatest declines happen up to about 150 to 300 minutes per week, which is one reason the exercise guidelines tell us to perform at least 150 minutes of moderate physical activity per week. As you can see, though, the risk of early death continues to decline as a person exercises even up to 1 hour per day. So there is no upper limit dose, even when it comes to exercising 420 minutes per week. The European Prospective Investigation into Cancer and Nutrition study looked at adults with diabetes, and they assessed whether they were cycling at the beginning of the study and then 5 years later. And they found that those who cycled 2.5 to 5 times a week had a 31% reduction in their risk of death from all causes. So definitely there are mortality benefits with exercise in persons with diabetes. And this is just a reminder that the physical activity guidelines, which Dr. Lucas just mentioned, are the same for people with diabetes as they are for general US adults. So that 150 minutes a week of moderate to vigorous intensity aerobic physical activity is recommended. And then Dr. Lucas discussed with us in detail strength training. And I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this slide because we've heard such great information and explanations in our exercise sessions. One reason that exercise is helpful for persons with diabetes is that it impacts the mitochondria. Mitochondria are the powerhouses of our cells. Here is a depiction of a cell. At the center is the nucleus, and then around it are these small organelles, little ovals, which represent mitochondria. The number of mitochondria in our cells can vary from 100 to 5,000. In our mitochondria, many biochemical reactions take place, turning nutrients into energy. And adenosine triphosphate, or ATP, is the energy currency in our cells. Unfortunately, insulin resistance is linked with a couple of problems with the mitochondria. So these are at least 2 problems. Insulin resistance in type 2 diabetes is associated with mitochondrial dysfunction. So the mitochondria don't work as well. And then there is a reduction in skeletal muscle mitochondrial content. So there are fewer mitochondria in the cells of muscle, skeletal muscle, in persons with insulin resistance. So there's a chicken and egg debate right now. Is the mitochondrial dysfunction causing insulin resistance, or is insulin resistance leading to mitochondrial dysfunction? The good news is that lifestyle changes, which improve mitochondrial dysfunction, can also reduce insulin resistance. So exercise can stimulate the mitochondria to increase their rate of ATP production as much as 100 times during maximal exertion. So exercise causes the mitochondria that we have in our cells to be more functional. And even in older individuals with muscle cells that are more prone to mitochondrial dysfunction, exercise can enhance activity. So that is really encouraging. So we have 3 options, at least, to treat mitochondrial dysfunction. We can take a medication, and a specific medication that improves mitochondrial dysfunction is Actose. The generic name is pioglitazone. So it works on the skeletal muscle and it reduces insulin resistance there. And then we also have exercise and calorie restriction. Now, in this class, we are focusing on lifestyle strategies to improve blood sugars. So we're going to look at exercise and calorie restriction. Both of these lifestyle strategies will improve mitochondrial function, and they will increase mitochondrial biogenesis, which means that we will have more copies of our mitochondria in our cells when we exercise and or calorie restrict. And a third benefit is that these lifestyle strategies reduce our reactive oxygen species. Reactive oxygen species are free radicals. So these are molecules that have an extra electron, and they can cause a lot of damage. They can damage our DNA, they can damage the walls of our cells and cause inflammation. So when we follow a lifestyle involving the calorie restriction and exercise, we have better functioning mitochondria, which means we have better insulin functioning in our cells, our blood sugars come down, and we even have vascular disease protection. So what have scientific studies shown about blood sugars in persons who exercise? Well, this study looked at people with type 2 diabetes, and they were put into 4 groups. So one group did not exercise, and their A1C values were represented by the top line here. And then the other 3 groups exercised. One group did only strength training or resistance exercise. Another group did only aerobic exercise. And the third exercise group did a combination of aerobic and strength training exercise. And you can see from the graph that those who were using both strength training and aerobic exercise ended up having the lowest hemoglobin A1C levels. And it was really only this group that was doing both strength training and aerobic exercise that had significant drops in their A1C compared to those who weren't exercising. Another interesting thing about this study is that those who exercised reduced their diabetes medications during the study, whereas those who weren't exercising actually increased their diabetes medications during the same study. So we see that there is an additive benefit of combining aerobic exercise with resistance exercise in persons with diabetes. Do you need to see a doctor before you exercise? Well, the American Diabetes Association says maybe. If you are already doing some exercise and you don't have any symptoms, you don't have chest pain, no pain when you take a walk, say, to your mailbox, and if you're going to start exercising at a low intensity, or you're going to do some moderate intensity exercise like walking, and you're going to start out with walking to your mailbox a few times a day, and then you're going to just build gradually, then you probably don't need to see a physician before you start that routine. In fact, you don't need to if you feel fine when you do it and you're already doing some walking. If you are older and you have autonomic neuropathy, so you have a rapid heart rate associated with diabetes, if you have heart disease, if you have a lung disease, then it's probably a good idea to avoid exercising out in hot weather or humid weather. High blood sugars increase our risk of dehydration, and of course, being out in the heat further increases that risk. Now, if you have diabetic eye disease, it's best to see an eye doctor before starting an intense exercise program. So vigorous activity, exercises, lifting weights, which cause us sometimes to hold our breath or may increase the pressure in our chest, can also affect the blood vessels in our eyes. The exercise that involves jarring, putting our heads down, could increase the risk of eye damage. And if you don't know whether you have eye disease, but you haven't seen an eye doctor, you're due for an exam, go ahead and see an eye doctor before starting a vigorous exercise program. For those who have neuropathy symptoms such as numbness or tingling in their feet, wearing appropriate foot gear and checking the feet every day is extra important. And for anyone with foot deformities, and including people who have had amputations, such as a toe amputation, wearing orthotics in the shoes and maybe custom shoes is very helpful for preventing foot injuries. And when an open sore does arise, that's the time to switch to non-weight bearing activities. One study that examined the impact of exercise in persons with diabetes was the Look Ahead study group. This study involved over 5,000 individuals in North America with type 2 diabetes who were also overweight. These persons were in a randomized study, so they were randomly assigned to lifestyle intervention or education. And those in the lifestyle intervention group were aiming to lose at least 7% of their starting weight, and they were increasing their physical activity to at least 175 minutes a week. So that's equivalent to 35 minutes of moderate intensity physical activity 5 days a week. And in this study, most of the people did walking for their exercise. At 1 year into the study, those who had lost the most weight were those who had been doing the most exercise. There was a dose-response relationship between physical activity and weight loss. So weight loss was greatest in the group who were exercising 287 minutes per week. Now that's quite a bit more than the minimum recommended amount of at least 150 minutes a week. This information from the Look Ahead study goes along with what the American College of Sports Medicine says. They say after weight loss, weight maintenance is improved with physical activity of greater than 250 minutes per week. So more physical activity is helpful for preventing weight regain. Now, when should a person who has diabetes exercise? A study looking at adults with type 2 diabetes who'd had the disease for at least around 10 years put them on 2 different exercise schedules. So in one part of the study, they walked for 30 minutes any time of day. And in another part of the study, these same individuals walked for 10 minutes after each meal 3 times a day. They wore continuous glucose monitors, which checked their glucose levels every 5 minutes, 24/7. And the researchers found that glucose values throughout the 24 hours were significantly lower when people walked after meals compared to when they walked just once a day. And Dr. Lucas has told us that walking after meals flattens the curves in our blood sugars at those times. And so this study shows that even just 10 minutes of walking can make a difference. Exercise is not only good for blood vessels, it's also good. It's not only good for blood sugars, it's also good for blood vessels. So this study was looking at 26 individuals who'd had type 1 diabetes for quite a while, 20 years on average. And they were put on an exercise regimen of cycling 1 hour, 2 or 3 times a week. And this exercise training lasted for 4 months. At the end of the 4 months, their blood vessels had become more flexible. So here you can see depicted vertically is the flow-mediated dilation of blood vessels. So this just represents how much blood vessels could expand or dilate when they were exposed to increased flow. So the blood vessels became significantly more flexible at 4 months. And this meant that the function of the endothelium lining the blood vessels had improved. Better endothelial function is associated with a lower risk of heart attacks. So this short exercise training of 4 months had a significant difference on vascular health. This figure shows the impact of different types of exercise on blood sugars. So you can see that if a person is doing aerobic exercise like cycling or like walking briskly, blood sugars tend to go down during and immediately after exercise. If a person is doing mixed exercise like interval exercise, blood sugars may go up or down, but on average, they tend to be more stable during and immediately after exercise. Whereas if a person is doing anaerobic exercise, this is very intense exercise like heavy weightlifting or sprinting, blood sugars tend to go up. And this makes sense because during intense exercise, you need energy and the adrenal glands pour out stress hormones like adrenaline and cortisol to raise blood sugars. So how should a person control their blood sugars around aerobic exercise like cycling or swimming or brisk walking? Well, if you are injecting insulin, it's ideal to have a pre-workout blood sugar around 150, give or take about 10 units. And you can achieve this by eating 60 to 90 minutes before exercise. A lot of people will reduce their insulin dose for that pre-exercise meal. Some will reduce it by about 50%. And again, I recommend talking with your doctor in order to determine the best way for you to adjust your insulin for your exercise program. But likely you will want to adjust your pre-exercise insulin. If you do not use insulin, then a pre-workout blood glucose of about 110 to 130 is a good insurance policy against low blood sugars. And as a reminder from our discussion last week, meals high in whole carbohydrates increase glycogen stores. Meals low in carbohydrates do not build our glycogen stores very much. And the studies have actually shown that our muscles end up breaking down protein during exercise more when we have not really built up our carbohydrate stores in our muscles. So a reminder to eat whole food carbohydrates in preparation for workouts. So in summary, exercise is medicine. It improves our mitochondrial function and number in persons with diabetes. It also improves blood vessel flexibility and helps to prevent heart attacks. And next week, we're going to talk about some long-term strategies for success. We'll also talk about the impact of sleep on our blood sugars. So I wish you a wonderful week of our program, and I look forward to seeing you next Thursday.
Well, thank you for joining us today. We hope you found today's presentation to be a blessing to you. And you know, it's never good to keep things to yourself. It's always best to share them. So find someone that you can share what you have been blessed with others. If you enjoyed today's presentation, let us know by hitting the like button and subscribe to this channel if you want to know when there's new presentations coming out. God bless. Have a great week. We'll see you next week.